fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. It's called the Avrum Rosensweig Show, but more specifically, it is Parsha and Prose. And it is together with my wonderful co-host, Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. How are you, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, thank you very much. How are you, Avrum? How was
I'm wonderful.
your week?
Yeah, my week was good, although I have a friend, unfortunately, my friend Marty Gallen, who I did radio and TV with for many years. He's very, very ill, so I'd like to dedicate the show to him, to his health, and to all those people out there who are suffering. It's a tough one. That's a good idea. I'd also like to dedicate the show to the IDF, to our Chayalim and Chayalot, and to the hostages, and to the parents and the grandparents and the family of those people who every single day, they wait for their family members to come home, be they hostages, be they soldiers. And I am in great awe, incredible awe of their courage and bravery. So they should all be well.
Absolutely. Last week here in chat, we have the merit to host many people. Some of them came after October 7th with all kinds of degrees of wounded people and people who lost their beloved ones. It's quite amazing, and we want our students to hear inspiring stories, the pain, but we always make sure to give the hope at the end of the lecture. And last week we brought in a lady. Her name is Orit Mark Ettinger. She lost her father 80 years ago in a pigua by terrorist attack in the Shomron. Then her older brother passed away. On October 7th, she lost her cousin, Kalmanzon. Many people heard about this name, a person who just ran from shul with his gun and fought and killed many terrorists, but at the end he was killed himself. And then a few months after the war started, she lost her youngest brother, Pedaya Mark. And she came here, and you can expect someone broken and tears. And she was such a powerhouse. Like, everyone left the room with the feeling, Am Yisrael Chai. But Am Yisrael Chai, for the first time, even where so many people are dead, so many people will never see the daylight again, but she brought to the room with hundreds of students this kind of hope, this kind of inspiration. To me, it was one of the greatest inspirational talk I ever heard.
Rabbi, I interviewed David Prose, the well-known Israeli and international singer, the other day. He was here in town to do a gala for the Israel Guide Dog Center for the Blind.
Oh.
So I spent a little time with him, and we talked. And I have to tell you something. You're speaking about the inimitable spirit of this Israeli woman who came here. God bless her. David Prose, after October 7th, he did 250 concerts, but not concerts in big arenas, Rabbi. Concerts in backyards, on kibbutzim, right? On the side of the road. And he had so much energy to do this for people who had lost family members, loved ones, and he just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. Finally, when he stopped, he went back to New York. He has a home in New York as well. And he just came to his wife and he said, I can't believe what's happened, and I can't believe what I've done. So you speak about the matzav ruach, you speak about the energy, the soul, the spirit of the Israeli. I'm also in great awe of these people.
Absolutely. By the way, I do believe that this is one of the trademarks of a real artist. He doesn't look to the size of the audience. He really wants to influence the people in the world around him or her. Shlomo Karlebach was a person like this. Sometimes he would go and give a concert to one person who was in a hospital. Um, and Leonard Cohen in 73 did exactly the same. He just arrived to Israel, was sitting with a group of soldiers. They just want to contribute and to give something from themselves to help the world to be better.
That actually makes me feel a little bit better as a speaker, because there have been times where I've spoken for an organization and two people will come out on a rainy night. But I did my speech anyway.
Listen, I'll tell you a story about Reb David Lifshitz. He was a famous rabbi in YU. And it was one winter day in New York, snowstorm and icy. But he went to the yeshiva to give his shir, his lesson to the students. And two students came to his shir that usually had like many others. And in the middle of the shir, if anyone of our listeners ever saw like a Litvish Rosh Yeshiva who came from Lita, the shir is very animated and very, they use all their body to express their ideas. And he started to scream and to shout, and all his body was part of the shir. And the student said, Rabbi, relax. We are only two people here. You don't have to do all this. Say, no, you are wrong. I'll tell you why. Because you are going to have children, and they are going to have children. And what I teach you is going to go through generations. So in front of my eyes, I see hundreds and thousands of people.
Beautiful. I love that. Do you experience that too when you're teaching a class, a grade 9
I
class?
wish. I tell this story, to have this little feeling. But I certainly do know that everything that we seed, we sometimes don't harvest. What we seed in the heart of students will come out one day. Will come out. I have 100% bitachon and confident that nothing is going in vain. It might take days, years, maybe generations, but nothing is going just in the wind with no impression.
It's an interesting thing that you're saying, because I've been talking to people about faith, emunah, and one of the things that I'm taking out of my discussions is the idea that you can have emunah, you can have faith in God, that God will do for you what you're asking, but it may not happen today. It might happen in 10 years from now.
And not always the way you want it, because sometimes we don't know exactly what is good for us and what is not. So I think we have to ask God to do the best for us. And I think that emunah and bitachon means that He knows what is good for us and what is going to benefit us. And sometimes it's not what we think is going to be for us. I remember I had a rabbi when I was in the age of shidduchim, of dates. He always said, never pray that God will give you this girl. You don't know. Just ask God to give you the right girl. And He knows better than you know.
Rabbi, just so we can riff here for a moment, as we like to do before our shiur, our class, does emunah mean that you have to do less than you would normally do if you didn't have emunah?
I think the opposite. I think emunah means that you do what you have to do, but knowing that what you do is under the power of a greater power, the power of God. But it never will give you this safety net or assurance or guarantee that what you are going to do is going to be successful. You take like biblical figures like Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a failure from the beginning to the end. He never managed to influence the people. On the contrary, he put himself in a danger of death. But that's what he had to do, and he did it. And he had a great emunah in God that he will do what he needs to do, and God will decide what will be the outcome. And I think for us, that's an important lesson, because sometimes we try to force God to do certain things. But emunah does not mean that what you want, you are going to get. I think that at the bottom, emunah means I know that God is going to be involved in what will happen. the outcome, if you think are going to be the outcome, is not part of the emunah. It's part of delusion, maybe sometimes.
Rabbi, today is election day in the United States of America. There are a lot of things going on around the world as well. In Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, our IDF soldiers are in Lebanon fighting very hard. We still remain in Gaza. So as we approach our Torah, I would like to give of our energy today and give of the zchut of learning as free people in the West toward the good outcome and the right outcome, and God should be with us.
Which, by the way, is not depend on one person. You know what? I think this is also the rabbi, the Jew. I must say, because many times I hear, like especially in my circle, Trump, Trump, Trump. Now, if I would be American, most likely I would vote for him, because I do believe that as a Jew, I would like to stand next to a person who helped Israel. Does it mean that I think that he's a great person? That's a very different story. But I want to say something very, very important. For a nation with 3,700 years of experience, we should know and we should internalize that our fate will never depend on one person or a party. Obviously, they can enhance and support the Jewish dream, the Zionist dream, which is like a biblical story, an amazing, epic story. And they can choose to help us, like Truman did when he decided that the UN is going, or the United States is going to support Israel in the dramatic vote about our country, and they can do the opposite. And they can do the opposite. So eventually, it's their free choice. But God has a plan. God will pursue his plan. It's better to be on his side rather than against him. If you want, when we are going to talk about the book of Shmot, of Genesis, of Exodus, we are going to highlight this idea. Paro could be one of the Jewish heroes. He chose not to be.
I was very excited. You mentioned that when you were in Israel, excuse me, over the holidays, we talked about this last week, but I've been thinking about it, that I think you went into a shul and someone asked you if you're Rabbi Gemara from the show. And I got very excited thinking about that. Kol hakavod. Well done.
I get this feedback on a weekly basis now, Avrum. This Shabbos I went to a Kiddush in Ar Chaim, and one of my former student mean that I think in my first year in Toronto in '93, he was my student. At the time, I couldn't speak English at all. It's just, to me, it's like unbelievable. I couldn't speak English. And I remember when I say to the Balabatim, I have to speak to the students, say, don't worry, you will learn. It took me like a decade or two to be able to communicate with my student. That's a different story. But this student came to me and said, Rabbi Gemara, I want you to know, I listen to the podcast every week and I actually learn quite a lot. I said, wow, you make my Shabbos, and gave me like a boost to continue with it. So people apparently listen, and apparently some of them even enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, so many people that I connect with as guests actually know you, and some have had you as a Rosh Yeshiva. I spoke to a fellow this week, Menachem Kaiser, who wrote a book. He says, how do you know Rabbi Gemara? I said, we're very dear friends. We do a show together, Always tell me, when you went to the Kiddush, do you eat at the Kiddush?
A little, not too much.
What do you have, herring?
Herring is a must. Like, you don't eat herring, something is like in your Jewish DNA is missing.
What kind of herring do you have, schmaltz or the other one?
Everything. When it comes to herring, everything goes. It can be with jalapeno, it can be sweet, it can be sour, all goes. You know what? It's like
you know why I asked you if you eat at the Kiddush? I know it sounds trite, but I've heard people say that one should be very careful about how much they eat at a Kiddush on Shabbat because their wife had prepared food for them at home.
So my wife is upset when I eat too much in the kiddush because then obviously you don't eat much at home. But I try to stay like on a reasonable one, like one shot of single malt and one herring. This give you like the feeling of Shabbos, and I'm very happy with it. You don't have to exaggerate with it.
We're a funny people that herring can do that, bring you closer to God. It's an interesting thing, I find.
There is a say in Hebrew, במקום שאין איש,
Yeah.
היה אתה איש. In a place with no people, you should be the ish. You should be the person that, take control and run the show. Which encourage people to feel as leaders, even if they think themselves as laymen. And my Rosh Yeshiva used to say, "B'makom she'ein ish," in a place there is no person, a herring is also a fish. Um, so, so a herring is unique. It's not a real fish, but for us Jews, we made it like special.
And cholent
You know
as well.
that if you go to New York, by the way, there are a store or two devoted to herring. Like you can take this and this and this and this, and each one comes with a different flavor. That's quite amazing.
My gosh, is it called Herring Is Us or what?
I don't know. It's like you just go to Brooklyn, people will tell you exactly where it is.
Rabbi, we began learning the cycle, the new cycle of the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses. We started with Bereshit, we went to Noach, and now we're in Parsha Lech Lecha. Before we start talking about the meat, the herring of the Parsha, give us a sense of how you learned the Parsha. And my question really is related to, I have here on my shelf many, many different books about the Parshiot. I pulled out a book this morning from Rav Soloveitchik, Zachrini Livracha. I have a book here, right to my right, by Abraham Joshua Heschel. I even have the Chumash, which was written by Rabbi Gunther Plaut. They should all rest in peace. What's your methodology? What's your method of learning Torah?
So that's a very good question, because actually I went through kind of transformation in my learning. Listen, I grew up in yeshivot and I learned the classic Mefarshim, if it's Rashi and Ramban and so on. And actually in the age of like around 40, 45, I wanted to be more honest with myself, and I could not imagine the stories of the Torah as I learned them until then as something real to me. At a certain point in your life, you want to be very honest with yourself. And things sounds to me too shallow, not very much inspiring as I wanted them to be, and I felt they are. And what I started to do is to try to imagine to myself what happened. What happened when the Torah is telling us, "Vayomer Hashem el Abraham, Lech Lecha me'artzecha mimoladecha." Hashem commanded him to leave the land. Like, what happened before that? Like, what happened in the life of Abraham before that? And by the way, we spoke many times about the role of Midrash. So the Midrash say that Abraham was is thrown into the furnace because Nimrod, the king of the time, wanted to kill him and so on. It's not in the Torah, right? But actually our sages, they did exactly what I did in a later stage in my life. They looked into the story and they asked themselves, what happened here? Why he had to leave his country? Wouldn't it be better if he stayed in the same place, the people he knows, and start to influence it from within? Why he had to go to another place? So questions like this, you start to think about your own life, about your own experiences, and I do believe that the greatest Parsha and commentator is the experience of your own life, because the Torah speaks in different voices to different people. And your experience sometimes sheds such a strong light on something written in the Torah that no one else who experienced what you went through can actually discover it. There is an expression which is called Or Haganuz, like the hidden light in the Torah. What is it? I do believe that the hidden light is a light that is reserved to you. And the light you see in the Torah is different than the light I see in the Torah. And there is nothing bad about it. On the contrary, the Torah given by God, who created different people, different minds, different opinions, gave the opportunity and the merit for every one of us to find something inspiring that help him to grow or her to grow in the Torah itself. And therefore, the Torah is the most amazing thing. It can talk in different voices and different sounds to different people. So two people read the same story, each one of them might come to different understanding. Why? Because it's my story. What Hashem gave us the merit is לעסוק בדברי Torah, like to deal in divrei Torah. We own the divrei Torah that we learn. What does it mean to own? It became part of us, and it became part of us like another part of our past experiences, our history, our family, and so on. And I find it very, very powerful. So when I go into the Torah, I try to think, okay, what the Torah is telling us, what happened really. What the dynamics that led to this situation? How a person felt after God told him so and so, or something happened to him. And amazingly enough, when I really think hard about these issues, and then I open a midrash or open the commentator, then I see that they went through the same thought process that I went through. But now it's very, very different because they don't lecture to me. On the contrary, they just like stand next to me, and we became a line of commentators. I don't compare myself to Rashi or to Ramban, but I think that the major work of like, okay, what really happened there? How does it relate to me? What God tried to tell me? I think at this stage, we all the same. Obviously, their knowledge, their understanding, their ability to compare things, and sometimes even their Ruach HaKodesh, their divine spirit, led them to much greater understanding than I understand. But on the basic level of research and the bequest of truth, I think we all the same.
In light of that, what has been your Lech Lecha?
My Lech Lecha was a person who came with an amazing idea, a shattering idea that actually threat every ruler at his time and for times to come. And let us know that there is a master power in the world which is stronger, more moral. Everyone have to abide to by the name of God. And this is a very revolutionary idea in a time where people use their power to oppress others, to mistreat others. And it came to a point of danger. What was exactly the danger, I don't know. But I would say, knowing the history of Russia, for example, the gulags, how they got rid from any a person who opposed the idea, dissidents, and threw them in the better case to the gulags. In the worst case, they just killed them. I guess that the same thing happened in the time of Abraham. So maybe it was not a fairness, maybe it was like threatening to kill him by sword. I don't know exactly what was the story, but I do know that God told him, listen, you cannot stay here. You have to leave. You have to a lecture and to spread your ideas elsewhere. And he sent them to, he sent Abraham and his family to the land of Israel, which will become for generation a pivotal place in the world in terms of change. And just think about it. I always tell my students, Indonesia, a place with few hundred millions of people.
Yes.
You never heard about them. You never talked about them. You can look in the New York Times or Washington Post in the last year or two. You will find them here and there about like little issues. Israel, every single day in the newspaper. We are only 10 million people in Israel. And why the world is so obsessed about that? I do believe that the moment Hashem told Abraham, Lech Lecha, מארצך ממולדתך לבית אביך אל הארץ אשר אראך, he made the land of Israel the most important place in the world in terms of changing the world to a better world. You spread your ideas, you spread the idea that actually human power must be used for good things, not to make the life of other people miserable, not to seek power for the sake of power. So to me, that's Lech Lecha. It's like a call, not only for Abraham, but for his descendants, for the world, to leave the ideas behind, the corrupt ideas behind, the corrupt society behind, and to go and start a new, perfect, ideal society.
Beautiful. Rabbi, in light of the idea that the light of the Torah is the light that emanates from us, my question to you is, what is Rabbi Shlomo Gemara's Lech Lecha?
Well, I made the opposite route. I went from Israel here, but I would say I think that God gave me some talents in the area of education. I think so, and I try to do something with it. Maybe I can say one word. The new elected rabbi in Israel, Rav Kalman Ber, is a very good friend of mine.
Oh.
We were living for a few years in KBY in Kerem B'Yavne. He was living in the first floor. I was living on the second one.
That's a yeshiva.
The yeshiva in Kerem B'Yavne. He wanted to be a rabbi. He's a very nice person, likable person, and he made it all the way to become the chief rabbi of Israel. To me, although I learned to be a rabbi and I passed the test of the rabbinate in Israel, I never felt that it will be my own fulfillment in life. I really wanted to be in education. Don't ask me why, but indeed, the moment we were born, apparently God assigned something to each one of us. And I felt that it's more in the area of education. And I'm very happy that I'm here and able sometimes to move students. It's not always the case, but I think that I made a difference.
I think so too. And I think you continue to. Ladies and gentlemen, the series that we're doing is called Parsha and Prose. I'm delighted to be here with my friend Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. This week we are talking about Parsha Lech Lecha, the portion in the Torah which is called Lech Lecha. And we are doing that in the guise of through the lens of the book The Great Gatsby. Let me tell you about both. The Torah portion Lech Lecha, which is found in Genesis 12:1 to 17:27, marks a significant turning point in the narrative of the Torah. It begins with God's call to Avram, commanding him to leave his homeland and embark on a journey to an unknown land that will be promised to him and to his descendants. This theme of faith and obedience is central to Avrum, later named Abraham, who responds to God's call, showcasing his truth, his trust, and his willingness to embrace the divine plan. The portion also highlights key events such as Avram's journey to Canaan, his encounters with Pharaoh in Egypt, and the covenant established between God and him, which includes the promise of numerous descendants and the gift of the land. Lech Lecha serves as a foundation for understanding the themes of covenant, identity, and divine promise that resonates throughout Jewish history. We are doing this, as I said, through the lens of The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby was written by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It was published in 1925. It's a novel that explores the themes of wealth, ambition, and the American dream during the Roaring '20s. The story is narrated by Nick Carraway, who becomes entangled in the life of his enigmatic neighbor, Jay Gatsby, a wealthy and mysterious figure known for his lavish parties and unrequited love for Daisy Buchanan. Through Gatsby's relentless pursuit of Daisy and his desire to attain a life of luxury and status, the novel critiques the moral decay and the disillusionment that can accompany the pursuit of material success. Now, Rabbi, in your choice of novels, most of which are classic, you decided on The Great Gatsby vis-a-vis Lech Lecha. Why?
Because I wanted to deal with a very mysterious figure in our Parsha, the cousin of Abraham, which was Lot. And Lot is a cousin of Abraham. He's going with him all the way from Haran, their homeland, through the land of Israel. They are going to Egypt when there was a drought in the land. He comes back with him and he make a decision to separate from Abraham. What was the reason for this? The reason was wealth, seeking of wealth. And to me, it was like such an immediate decision to take the Great Gatsby, because the whole story is about the fight between values and wealth. Integration into a very shining, attracting society on one hand, and the cost that people are willing to pay in terms of their values, morals. And to me, the whole story is about this fight between desires, as I said, with the glitzy life of celebrities and stars, to be strong with your family values, with your own morals. And I think that Fitzgerald warned us the same way, or I would say the modern way, that the Torah warned us about Lot, who chooses Sodom because it's wealth over the morals of his mentor and uncle Abraham.
The question, Rabbi, I have for you, though, I understand the juxtaposition and the comparison, but Avram Avinu, when he left Ur of Chaldees, he left with a lot of wealth. And then when he went down to Egypt in this Parsha, Pharaoh gave him goats and all kinds of animals and rechushim, I think they call it, all property and so on. He wasn't a poor man.
He wasn't. But, our sages say, Yesh lo mane rotze 200. A person who had $100,000, he wants $200,000. And if he had $1 million, he does not stop there. He wants $2 million. That's the human nature. There is something beautiful about it, because otherwise the world would not progress. The motivation to achieve more and more and more is the engine behind the development of this world. However, there is a danger when it comes to wealth for wealth. Listen, I'm sure that Abraham Avinu, he spread something quite magnificent in the world. Now, he hosted people. He maybe made kind of conferences of today and things like this. He needed money. He needed money. Money is not a curse. Money is not a bad thing. Money is a wonderful thing when you use it for the right things. So I think that the Torah is teaching us here something very important. If you want to be successful religiously, as Abraham was, you have to be rich. And you know what? This is a story of many centuries in Am Yisrael. The first thing that people did, if it was in Spain or Babel, they moved first of all because they could open yeshivot. Open yeshivot because they had the money, they had the means to do it. And obviously the Jewish people sometimes faced terrible times, but they basically always moved to places where they could develop the community, and it requires money. It requires money. That's why they went from Israel under the Romans, who wanted huge, ridiculous amounts of taxes, which sometimes was more than they produced, to Babel, that was much more hospitable. That's the story of Jews who went to Spain after Babylon became a place that Jews could not live there, and so on and so on. So the Torah is telling us, yes, of course Abraham was rich, but what did he use it for? Mm-hmm. He used it to spread his ideas all over the world. He needed money, and he did it well.
So you're talking about the wealth of the community, not necessarily an individual wealth.
Right, and listen, here is the problem. I think that Lot fell into the trap of money for money. You know, people just sometimes enjoy the fact that they have money. It like give them a reassurance. It give them self-esteem. It give them the feeling of success. Today, some people will, do it by being to master like a video game. They feel good about themselves. They manage to go from one level to another. Money is also sometimes not for the money itself. It's just the feeling. Oh, I can do it. I can do this business. I can do this deal. What they do with their money, that's a very different story. But they want to accumulate money for money. And Lot, I think, was attracted to the money, to become rich, to become affluent, to become part of the elite of Israel that at the time was in Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is the sad part. He grew in a very different environment that, although they had money, they used the money only for the benefit of community and people, hosting people. All this cost lots of money. If you read the story next week, Parsha, how Abraham and Sarah hosted people, you know what? This was like 5 dishes a meal, and it cost money. If you want to spread your ideas, you have to bring people in, to feed them well, to let them sleep. It all costs money. But he wanted the money for the sake of money, to become affluent, to live the life of celebrities, exactly as he described in The Great Gatsby. That's exactly, it's like the lifestyle that attract the people, Gatsby or others, and Lot.
And just to encourage your point, the Torah says that the herdsmen of Lot and the herdsmen of Avram were not getting along. I find interesting, it didn't say that Avram and Lot weren't getting along, but maybe by extension. And so Abraham understood this, and very wisely he said, the two of us, we cannot encompass the same piece of land. Why? Because Abraham understood he had a mission in life, and that wouldn't work out very well for his godly mission. So what did Avram say to Lot? He didn't say, you know what, I'm going to give you this parcel of land. He said, you tell me what you want. Right? I found that very, very compelling.
Now, let me ask you a question, because when every time I read this, what was the end game of Abraham? Did he want indeed to separate, or he just put it there and he was hoping that he will say, no, we stay together. And you know what? I see here a problem. We will work out this problem. What do you think when you read this story? What Avram actually wanted? We are very influenced by the end. We know that they separated. But let's try to think through the mind of Avram. What do you think he wanted here to happen?
I think Avram was a very fine negotiator. He was very, very wise in terms of how he approached challenges in life, and this was clearly a very, very big one. As I said before, is sort of laying the groundwork for the future of the Jewish people. I think that he offered him wherever he would like to go, perhaps thinking he may not take me up on my offer, and we may be able to come together, and Lot may become a little bit more conciliatory and maybe a better nephew and partner in my task. On the other hand, he considered, you know what, he may take me up on my offer and take a piece of land that will indeed separate us. So it could be that he wasn't quite clear on what the outcome was going to be, but either way, it might have worked.
What we call actually a test. I think Abraham wanted full devotion to his idea of spreading the divine message to the world. For this, you cannot have a half-hearted person that is not sure about the life mission. And I think that Abraham put in front of him the question, where do you want to be? You want to be with me? That means that you are going to give up some of your wealth, and we will have to maybe reduce the size of our herds or something like this. But if you are going to choose otherwise, then we shouldn't be together. We indeed should not be together, because I have a life mission and you become a distraction to this. And as he, I think, suspected, because when you offer something like this to a person, you suspect that maybe he will choose wrongly. Because otherwise, if I would be Avram and I wanted Lot to stay with me no matter what, I think I could find a few ways to do it without offering like separation. The offer to separate means that Avram grew suspicious about Lot, where his heart really is, in the money, in the materialistic world, or in the world of ideas and divine style of life. And he just did a test. And by the way, Lot failed it miserably. How do I know that? Because if you would be Lot and you indeed hesitate over it, you would say, listen, I don't know, we have this problem. The Torah said it so clearly. The moment Abraham offered it, the next words of the Torah, Vaisa Lot Mikedem. He did not negotiate. He did not say, let's try to find a solution. You know what? You raise a point here. Maybe we can discuss it. No, no, no. Once Abraham offered it, he separated himself. And therefore, by the way, Chachamim saw the word Mikedem, which sounds like towards the east. But actually in Hebrew, it should be Vaisa Lot Lekedem. He traveled towards the east. And it said he traveled from the east. No, he was in the west. What does that mean? So our sages explain that he traveled away from Kadmono Shel Olam, the ancient one, God himself. So they saw it indeed, not only traveling for the sake of the well-being of his sheep and herds, it was a step away from all the ideals and the values of the house of Abraham.
Rabbi, as we have in the Great Gatsby and every other novel ever written, that you have the primary characters, you have secondary characters, and then you have characters who are almost like extras. Explain to us Lot in the context of that within the Torah.
So that's a great question, because I myself cannot put the finger of who it was. The interesting Fitzgerald writes the book with a narrator, like a person who tells a story to others, which is interesting because you could expect like to take not a person, but like to tell the story by the figures of the story. Why does he have to bring one person in order to tell the story about Gatsby, about Buchanan? I think Fitzgerald wants to tell us that we are the narrator. We are the people who see the world. We have to analyze what is happening to us. Where are we in this world? Like, what is the world of our, what are the values of our world? And so it's very hard to say who exactly is Lot in this story, because everyone in the story wants to be a little bit like Gatsby, about like the stars, because it's not clear even what Gatsby actually wanted. It was not just he saw again money as a way to assimilate into the society that he was deprived from as a child, as a grown-up. But the whole atmosphere in the book is an atmosphere of leaving values behind in order to immerse into society which lack these values. So it can be the women of the story, it can be George, it can be Tom. It just, every one of them like hit this dilemma of wealth versus morals.
Rabbi, we know that Lot did indeed separate from Abraham. And we're going to learn more in the coming Parshiot about what happened to him. He clearly ensconced himself in a world of wealth. And when that takes you over, you can change as a person. But we also know that later on, when the angels come to rescue him, that he did have an semblance of hachnat orchim, of chesed, of kindness, right? So my question to you is, how did Lot's decision to leave Abraham and embrace wealth, how did that change his relationship with Abraham?
As I said, the separation was much more than two relatives that decided, not to live together anymore. It was a split over values. No questions about this one. And I think this story is very powerful, especially in the Jewish history, because we always had this tendency to be part of the society around us, which was not always with the same morals we brought. and at the same time to keep the people, the values, the nation we are. And this is not easy. And the Torah here want to tell us it's not going to be easy. You will always see Egypt with all its richness and the water. You are going to see the people of Sodom, and you will have to make a decision. You will have to make a decision. Are you going to be part of this society and losing your values, or you are going to stay to your values and try to do the best? That's to me the main point of the story of Lot and Abraham. Like it's a story that happened 100 years ago to Jews who came from Europe to America and had to work on Shabbos and had to be part of the American society. And this is the story of Lot. So what happened at the end? As you said, Abraham still felt that he's his relative, and he endangered his life in order to save Lot from the war against the four kings. Lot himself, we never see that actually he returned to Abraham directly. He left the house and he made a decision. But I want to say one thing, which is quite important. You know, sometimes education has such a powerful impact that even when you leave your previous neighborhood and family, something is ingrained there. You know, I think I would love actually to hear from you, because you don't live exactly the life of your father, but from people who knew your father, I hear that many things that he possessed, you also possessed. It's like ingrained in you. And I do believe many times when parents come to me and they say, oh, my son is so different, I said, you know what? You are going to be surprised. In 10 years, he's going to be very much like you. Just give them the time, because I do believe that what we receive in our early years will stay with us forever. And Lot also, you cannot live with a person like Abraham and not to be heavily influenced by his deeds, by his personality, by his warmth, by his care. And this stayed with him. The only question is, there is a say, good minus God equals zero. Because you take like the O in the middle, and you take like God from the good, and you stayed with something like round. I don't know if it's true or not, but I mean it's interesting thought. But if Lot can be any evidence to this, a person who stayed with he was a good person. He took a huge personal risk when he hosted the people, but he was removed from God. And part of his story and the Gatsby story is that when you think that you gain wealth by sacrificing your morals, you just see the beginning of the movie. The end of the movie ends up very, very tragically in Gatsby and with Lot. It's a terrible end for the life of Lot. So for his choice, he lost the Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. He was left with nothing. I think it's also one of the great lessons that we can learn from our Parsha and from the Great Gatsby.
When you study the Torah very carefully, it's very smart to take your time and to read each word and each phrase in a way that you're connecting it to the rest of your learning, to the rest of the Torah. And I say this because there's a tapestry, there's a pattern that occurs in front of us within the Torah. This week, as I was learning the Parsha, I noticed that the Parsha said 4 times, and he built there an altar to Hashem and invoked Hashem by name. The Torah also says in 15:6, and he trusted Hashem. So I put these all together And my thought was that Abraham was on a journey of strengthening his belief in God, his sense of monotheism. Does that something that makes sense?
I am sure that people who are involved in spreading an idea, the more they involve, I'm sure he ran into debates with other people. They were asking questions. Avram was a great teacher. Let's put it very simple. He was a great teacher. He came with an amazing idea, a monotheism. He had to defeat an existing idea of paganism, avodah zarah, and I have no doubt in my mind, because I know it as a teacher, when you try to teach something, what happens is you understand it better. So I think it was a mutual process. Certainly, Abraham came with this idea. He became convinced that there is one God. The one God even talked to him and promised him. But this was not his life mission. I believe that God, the idea of God, other people had it too. We read about Melchizedek in our Parsha. They were like righteous people, great people who felt the presence of God in their life. What was special about Abraham, he felt that his life mission is to spread this idea to the world, not to keep it to himself or to his family. He wanted to spread it to the world. And I do believe, again, upon my experience, the more he explained it to people, the more he became convinced how strong and powerful this idea is and how necessary it is. Because I'm sure that he went to all kinds of society that admired power and saw slaves as something that, served them. And if you are more powerful than the other one, you can enslave people. And I do believe that by visiting different societies, Abraham understood that this idea is an idea that is going to redeem the world. It's going to give a real power to all people, regardless their position in society. But because they are Tzelem Elokim, they are entitled to freedom. They are entitled to worship God and not only human beings, and so on. So I do think, and again, I can tell you as a teacher, the more you teach, the more you understand it.
Excuse me. So was it important then that the Torah tells us that he trusted Hashem?
I think it's very important, because sometimes in our life, even for great people, there are points that they stand and they don't understand Hashem. They don't understand. Listen, think about a person that he's the ambassador of God, but he has no children. Like, he faced the danger of discontinuity. Everything that he worked for is going to collapse because there is no one to take over. You need lots of emunah in situations like this. You need lots of emunah to be in the camps. You need lots of emunah to fight for Israel. You need lots of emunah to read every chapter of the Jewish history and to believe that the Jewish people will come strong and alive from this experience. Does it mean that you don't ask questions? Of course you ask questions. Of course you ask questions. But here is a part of the emunah, to know that there is a power above us who control things, and hopefully he will turn them to the better.
I want to tell you a beautiful piece that I read this morning. I learned this morning in a sefer called The Rav Thinking Aloud. It's on Sefer Bereshit. I think you're going to like this. You notice that in the Parsha, it says that Avram Avinu built an altar. Nachon? It says it a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that he made a sacrifice.
It was something different than the Mizbeach that came afterwards. To me, every time that he built an altar, it was like kind of academy to theology. So the Mizbeach was more about like a gathering place, a religious gathering place, to teach people about the principles of his new faith.
Oh, that's very nice. And Rabbi Soloveitchik speaks about this, and he says you'll find in the Torah that Avram Avinu actually built an altar and offered a sacrifice at the Akedah when he was about to offer his son. And I think you see it by Yaakov too in Parshat Vayigash. But here's what he said about the offering, that the offering he did not make, but he did make. He says like this. He says, so what did he sacrifice? Rabbi Soloveitchik says his own independence, his own pride, his own comfort, his own desires, his own logic, his own reasons. He believed if one believes it is an act of surrender, of sacrifice. So essentially what he was saying was, by having this emunah in God, by trusting God, by building these altars, by invoking the name of God, what was he indeed sacrificing? Well, he was sacrificing his total belief in himself, which is the problem with the people who built the Tower of Babel. They will see us. They will know who we are. And Rabbi Soloveitchik said, no. He was giving that up by giving into God. What a lovely thought.
I think it's a fundamental thought, not only a lovely one. And please keep this to the time that, God willing, we are going to discuss the book of Vayikra, because it discusses a lot of the idea of sacrifices. And in our modern world, it sounds so odd and foreign and lo shayach in this world. And this point that Rav Soloveitchik make shed light on the whole idea of what a korban really is. It's not about animals. It's about ourselves. But let's keep it to Vayikra.
We know in this Parsha that God said you should circumcise your boys, including yourself. And indeed, Avram Avinu did that, and he did it with his camp, with his boys. What's circumcision all about, Rabbi?
Well, in our literature, there are few explanations to why we actually maim ourselves by doing this surgery, which is painful and sometimes even dangerous. I think the main idea is that the Abrahamic family is different. And different in terms of the ideals and the value that they are going to bring to the world, not only in this generation, but in the generations to come. So you might ask yourself, tell me, why the breath is in a certain private place in the human being? Why don't you take, I don't know, like the ear, the forehead? There are many more public places. This place was chosen because this is a place of continuity. This is a place of continuity. And I think the message to a little baby is, you are not alone. You belong to what came before you, and your father also had this sign, a seal of the breed, and you are going to have it to your child. And it's not only about the sign in your flesh, it's about the values that you are going to transmit to the next generations. And you know, when the bracha in the brit is lachniso bibrito shel Abraham Avinu. Now, the brit with Abraham was not only to make a cut in your flesh, it was to take all the values that Abraham stood for, which are listed in chapter 18 in Bereshit, la'asot derech tzedakah u'mishpat. You are going to teach your children how to do charity, justice, law. So this is Brito Shel Avraham Avinu. There is something in the flesh just to remind you that your responsibility is not only for yourself, but for future generations, as this part of the body represents. And this is not going to end only there. It's Brito Shel Avraham Avinu. And the Brit with Avraham, the covenant with Avraham, was about lifestyle, values, ideals.
Rabbi, when my son had his bris, Noach, I was the sundik, which meant that I held him in my arms. And it made the covenant ever more powerful because I was literally a witness to what was happening to him. do you have any distinct memories about your son's
I
group?
had like 4 children, and in one of them I actually made the cut. Um,
Oh, you did. 4 boys. You have 4 boys.
yeah, 4 boys. And it's a very difficult thing, especially in our world, to cause pain to your own child. It's not an easy experience to any father. But at the same time, like, you have to think about it. You yourself and your father and your grandfather, you part of a chain of hundreds of generations who are doing this. And this makes it very, very unique.
Wow. Rabbi, I want to thank you for a wonderful share today. I enjoyed it very much, and I'm so excited about heading into Sefer Bereshit and soon Shemot, because these are stories and they're very, very meaty and hearty stories. And I love the way you put the concept of Tzelem Elokim, the idea that we are all created in the image of God, and therefore we are all front and center in terms of what happens obviously in our lives, but through the Chumash. I really appreciate the way you make those analogies.
Yeah. And I hope that, it really gives some food for thought for the people who listen to us. I just want to make a final comment about the story of Lot, because here lies a huge difference between Fitzgerald and the tragic end of Gatsby and the tragedies that are like on left and right, which are very similar to the tragedy that happened to Lot himself. He was was saved in the last second, and he lost part of his family in Sodom, and he lost everything. The story of the Great Gatsby is a story with no real hope. It's actually come to devastate you and to take some, to think about life a little bit. But the story of Lot on the surface ends very similarly to the Great Gatsby. But the truth is that the Tanakh does not end in the story of Lot. From Lot, through his 2 daughters, there are 2 nations, like Moab and Ammon, and they were enemies to the Jewish people later on. But at the same time, the greatest Ruth, who came from Moab, she was the mother of the Messiah, of the future of the Jewish people. And to me, is one of the most powerful parts of the story of Lot. Yes, Lot himself made the wrong choices, and he lost the opportunity to be part of the Jewish family. That's a major one. Who remember Lot and who remember Abraham? It's like one went to the shadows of history, and one became like a prominent figure. But at the same time, for his courage to host the angels who came to Sodom, for his hospitality, for the thing that he inherited from the house of Abraham, he was responsible for the great success of David HaMelech, of King Solomon. So the Torah, with all the desperation and with all the dark end of the story of Lot, leaves a very narrow beam of hope and light that is going to shine later in King David and King Solomon. So I think it's a very interesting approach that the Torah is unique with. In the darkest of darkest, you always have this beam of light that is going to shine at the end.
It's lovely. I want to conclude with a couple of quotes from the Great Gatsby, which I think are poignant and which I think are important to our share today. One of them was said by Tom Buchanan: "The rich get richer and the poor get children." And that's like you. You have 8 kids. Kanei Nahara.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. Nick Carraway.
And honestly, this is there is a story about a person in Jerusalem who came home and told his wife, that we are billionaires. She said, "What billionaires? We don't have enough money to put like a dinner tonight." He said, "No, you don't understand. I spoke today to a Jew in shul, and he told me that unfortunately he had no children. And I asked him, tell me, how much would you pay if you could have like one child? He said, millions of dollars just to have a child. So he said to her, we have 11 children. Imagine how many millions we have. So, that's really makes you really rich, like family, children. And they say in Hebrew, Yeladim ze simcha.
And you translate that?
Children are happiness.
Very good.
Well, sometimes it takes time until you see that, and sometimes they
But
can be everything against happiness. But as they say, in the great scheme, they are a source of happiness.
eventually that evolves. And the final quote is, and this is a very good one, it's by Nick Carraway. There are only the pursued, the pursuing, the busy, and the tired. You know why I like that?
Why?
Because I think about Avram Avinu, and I think about Sarah, and I think about their trek from Ur of Chaldees to Canaan down to Egypt and back, and I think about Yitzchak similarly, and Yaakov especially. And I saw how much my father worked and how hard he worked to bring Torah and Yiddishkeit to the Jewish people, and I saw how tired he was, and it was being tired of working very hard with a plan, with a mission. And I think that for people like yourself, I know that you're totally committed to what you do as an educator. We were talking about money having to do with this podcast. You said we don't get paid, and but you said I'm doing it l'shem shamayim because I want to spread Torah as far and wide as possible. And I know, as an example, you're not feeling great today. Refuah shalem, you feel better,
Thank you.
but you're here anyway, and you taught your shir this morning anyway. And I can see you're a little bit tired. Not in a critical way, in a positive way, because you work hard. And I understand Carraway's quote, and then there are the tired. And the tired to me are those people who are out there pounding the pavement to make the world a better place.
That's very nice. And on my this Shabbos, last Shabbos, I met on my way to shul. I met Professor Soken, a wonderful person, and
Paul
he
Soken.
told me about your father. Actually, he was in Kitchener, and your father was a rabbi in Kitchener, and he indeed told me exactly what you just said, how hard he worked to bring people closer to shul and to Torah life.
Rabbi, in conclusion, I have a prayer that I would like to say for the IDF. But before I do, I was in Beth David Synagogue this past week, and I was talking to Marshall Loomer, who's sort of the stand-in spiritual leader. And I was talking about Parsha and Prose. And he said, oh, Rabbi Gemara, he says, every time it's Shabbat, he goes, I'm walking and I see him and we stop and we talk. So your trek from shul to home and home to shul, there's a lot of things that come out of that, huh?
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. My grandchild once walked with me from shul home. So we went through Clanton Park, Beit David, and every place, like there are people who say, Shalom Aleichem, how are you, Rabbi Gemara, and so on. And say, Saba, I didn't know that you are a celebrity. I said, no, I just like once said to these people Shabbat Shalom, and now they just give me back Shabbat Shalom.
Are you okay with stopping and schmoozing for a little bit?
I love it. That's
You do love
best part. The best part. Sometimes even when I walk home and it's too early, I go to the lobby of Beit David, and always I meet someone. The grandparents of a student, someone else. I love schmoozing with Jews. You know what? We Jews are the best schmoozers. Everyone has an amazing story, an inspiring story. I love to hear the stories of people. Wonderful. I just love it.
I also enjoy it very much. Rabbi, I'd like to conclude with the prayer for the IDF, and it goes as follows. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless the fighters of the Israel Defense Force, who stand guard over our land and the cities of our God, from the border of the Lebanon to the desert of Egypt, and from the great sea unto the approach of the Arava, on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May Hashem cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down before them. May the Holy One, blessed be he, is preserve and rescue our fighting men from every trouble and distress, and from every plague and every illness. And may he send blessing and success in their every endeavor. May he lead our enemies under their sway, and may he grant them salvation and crown them with victory. And may there be fulfilled for them the verse, For it is Hashem your God who goes with you to battle your enemies for you to save you. Now let us respond. Amen.
Amen.
All right. We want to thank everybody for watching, for listening. We had a wonderful time. And guess what? The Torah continues throughout the week and into next week and onwards. So we will be here throughout the year, learning with you and teaching the Parshiot, the portions of the Torah, in concert or through the lens of great literature and sometimes symphonies as well. Please be in touch with us. You can reach me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com, and the rabbi's email is at the bottom of his screen. Any closing words, Rabbi?
I just want to prepare our viewers, because the next week's Parsha we are going to deal with a very long book, which is a Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. This is the second time that we are going to learn something from Dostoevsky, and it's Russian. And when I say Russian, it's like dark and heavy and long. So please, if you have some time just to read, just to get, even if you don't cover the entire book, just and by the way, in many Russian literature classes, this is the first book that they learn about Russian literature, and there is a good reason for that. So if you have some time, just take a look in one chapter, maybe a few pages, just to get the atmosphere.
That's why I love the Russians who are doing construction in our building here. They're strong people. They're physical. Their work is using their hands. But I sit and I talk with them, and they're always fascinating. Always.
They are. They bring like experience of years. They know something about the human nature. Absolutely.
I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again. Until we meet you next week, the series is called Parsha and Prose with myself, Avrum Rosensweig, and Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. And as we say in the vernacular in Yiddish, Sei gesund, go in health. Am Yisrael Chai.
Amen.